everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Prosperity Builders podcast. Our broadcast is really for you, and we're bringing you local community leaders. We're bringing you local business owners, and we are really proud today to be with William Mangum, one of the local artists that we're looking forward to sharing some of his information about. So, William, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
So, not only is William Mangum, we'll go refer to him as Bill at this point, a local artist. He is a national artist, and anywhere you go, really around the world, people know who William Mangum is. So we are really honored to be here today with Bill. Welcome. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
Bill chose to get a little bit more dressed up than the rest of us.
Yes, yeah.
But,
The real deal here.
He wanted to be in character. Bill, I just want to start out by saying, first of all, how much we have respect and admiration for what you do, for not just the fabulous artwork, but for the amount of community spirit and community involvement and all these things that you do for the community. It's wonderful. So let's start there and tell us what you're doing in that area. Besides, everyone knows that you're an artist, but what they not know is how much you give back to the community.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your program, and hello, everybody. It and I have been richly blessed to be a citizen of Greensboro. I came here to UNCG to get an art degree, and little did I know it would turn into a full-blown livelihood where I established a gallery, raised a family, and have been an opportunity to push off and literally travel around the world and capture some amazing subjects. But as they say, there's no place like home. And when you look at how Greensboro has enriched me, it just became natural. Now, there have been lots of individuals and characters that have come into my life, but your poignant question of giving back, the honor card probably is what I'm best known for in this area. And what began in Greensboro in 1987, I met a homeless fellow by the name of Mike Saavedra. I was having breakfast with a fellow, friend, Peter Van Story at the time, and you know how when someone looks at you, they kind of nod and you nod back? Well, that began that relationship. And when Peter looked at who I was nodding at, he went, "Oh my Lord, it looks like that guy would take your head off." And I said, "Yeah, but I think he's homeless." And for me, that was my first introduction. Well, after Peter left, he approached me for some money, and I wasn't comfortable doing that, but I offered to buy him some breakfast. And that turned into an opportunity to be a good Samaritan and take him down to Greensboro Urban Ministry. And as Michael was getting out of the car, I reached into my wallet, and he thought I was going to give him some money, but I gave him a business card. And I said, "Why don't you call me in a couple of days and let me know how you're doing?" Well, that turned into a 3-year friendship until ultimately Michael passed away. Not only was Michael homeless, he was a paranoid schizophrenic. And I became his caretaker during that time. Got to know his family. But what really happened was he pricked my heart to use my talent to help those that are underserved. And I was asked to create a painting for a program called the Honor Card, and now it is in its 35-year anniversary. Here's an example of last year's card, and basically how it works is with a donation of $5 or more, you send it to a friend or family member, and it says a gift has been given in your honor to support the needy and homeless in our community. And you know, it's amazing that Michael's impression upon me would grow. So now what began in Greensboro is actually in 15 cities across North Carolina.
I didn't realize that.
And the first year we did the card, it raised $50,000, and to date has raised nearly $10 million.
That's amazing.
That's good for you, Bill.
Wow.
Well, not good for me, good for Michael.
Good for your
ministry.
efforts, yeah.
Yeah. So this year's honor card, actually I just completed it a couple months ago. You're getting a sneak preview. It's not even been published or printed, but the title of this year's card is Making a Difference, and that is me and Michael.
Oh, how special.
Walking. So we're excited about that. It's culminating into a new book that will debut this fall, and it's titled Making a Difference as well. It's a simple biography about me, my relationship, the story with me and Michael, but then it has all 35 paintings in the book and the inspiration behind each one.
Wow. What a great opportunity for people to have something like that for Christmas to give to friends. And yeah. So it'll be available by September, you said? Okay.
Yeah.
How would somebody go about ordering the honor cards? How do they do that?
Well, in Greensboro, certainly going through Greensboro Urban Ministry, but there are about 15, 20 different retail outlets. A lot of the churches support the program. But if you Google or go to the honorcard.com, that's the official website.
Yeah.
There you can see all the cities that participate. You can see the inspiration behind this year's card and how to find them.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking back about the rich history of that. Is there a particular memory of your traveling the world and painting that stands out to you as one of your most beloved experiences?
Wow, man. Yeah, maybe getting naked on a beach in Greek Isles.
There you go. That's a good one.
Is there a picture or a painting when you can dump in here?
All right, so this is where what we're drinking here.
That's where it kicks in.
I've only had a couple of sips where we're being real.
Right.
Honestly, all those trips came about through patrons. That's what was fascinating. My brother came up with the idea. My brother's 10 years older than me. And he said, why don't you think about maybe getting some patrons, if they would underwrite these trips, they'd put up $1,000, and in return you'd give them a credit, like $1,500 towards the purchase of a painting. So with that, Cynthia, my wife and I, we traveled all around the world. I mean, Austria, Switzerland, the Greek Isles, Bermuda, Europe. It was just amazing. And all of that really blossomed my talent. It was one thing to paint locally, and North Carolina is an artist's paradise.
Right.
But doing those trips equipped me to paint North Carolina in a very special manner after that.
Yeah. Did you grow up here? Where were you before you came to UNCG?
So I was born in Pinehurst. My father was in the Navy during that early childhood, traveled Eastern U.S. And then my mother had a stroke when I was 8 years old. And I was brought to Mamers, North Carolina. I was raised by my aunts and uncles on a tobacco farm.
How about that?
And it was miserable. I mean, the first morning I had this bowl of cereal, big bowl like Jethro Bodine, cornflakes pouring on there, poured the milk on it, took a heaping spoonful, started gagging, spewed the cornflakes across the table.
Real milk.
Aunt Kate came out. She said, Billy, you okay? I said, Aunt Kate. I said, that milk's gone bad. She said, I just milked the cow this morning. Oh, man, where am I?
Oh my God.
So I could not wait to get away from Mamers, but ironically, what happened is it came around 180, and I created one of the best books I ever did called Carolina Preserves.
I love that book.
Based on Aunt Kate. And what Aunt Kate did in her garden by preserving all these wonderful fruits and vegetables, I did with 48 different North Carolinians. So I captured their inspiration, their stories, and then we painted some marvelous subjects for that book.
How many books now?
14.
That's
This will
amazing.
be the 14th book coming up, like Making a Difference.
Yeah.
And so I am a blessed fellow.
Yeah, you are. Can we just talk for a minute about your connection with the urban ministry, besides the honor card, and your involvement there?
Well, when Michael was in my life, one of the things I would do is I would go down and volunteer. And for over 30 years, I led a prayer breakfast on Wednesday mornings. And what was really neat about it is we had high school students from all across the city to come, participate, and reach out. And there were great lessons and morals taught during all of that. And what really happened was much of the inspiration for the honor cards came from serving that community. So I built really strong relationships and friendships, and many of them appeared in my paintings over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in for a second. All three of our children were blessed at being graced with Bill's company on those Wednesday mornings, and to this day, and they've been around a little bit longer since they got out of high school, they still talk about how much that impressed them and how much difference that made in their lives. So, I mean, you can't even imagine how many young people's lives you changed in a positive way with that.
You're kind. Thank you.
Yeah. So, just a curious question. When you were at UNCG, was there a professor or an event that happened that really kind of triggered you to really get your passion into the next gear, which might have led to where you are today?
Well, I would say my time at school was not real good.
Yeah.
It was not very encouraging. They felt that you should be there for art's sake.
Okay.
And I really wanted to make a livelihood out of this. So I leaned outside of the program, and I found a lot of professional artists that would give me great advice. But I would also go to the UNCG library, and there was this publication called American Artist Magazine, and every month it would feature a watercolor artist. And that was the medium that I was leaning into. So I would write to them, or I would read their programs, and it really sort of instilled in me how to compete, how to project myself, how to publish my work. And there was one professor, Peter Agostini, at UNCG, that probably had the biggest name, and he actually exhibited at the National Arts Club. And one of the greatest honors I had was winning an award and exhibiting at the National Arts Club in New York. So that, I've always been competitive in that sense, but reality is, the bottom line, it didn't matter how many galleries I got in or showed, the real talent shined when you sold the work. I mean, you had to find an audience. And after so many galleries that I participated in, most of them would take 50 to 60% of your painting, and then by the time you paid to ship it or get it back, I mean, you're really not making a whole lot.
Right.
So I decided to open up my own gallery in 1982 with my brother's help. It was called Carey Mangum Gallery. Bob Carey, my half-brother, named it after him. And it opened up with a handful of originals and some prints that I did. I actually showed other artists. I did that for about a year, stopped, and then I was able to fill the gallery with my own work. It grew up until 1995. Joy Ross, my great associate, has been with me for 28 years. The gallery morphed into a pretty substantial, almost 5,000 square feet, and it showcased more originals than I could create and publications, and we learned how to license my work, put it in calendars, on mugs, not toilet seat covers.
You still working on that one?
No, I think I'm gonna let that one go by.
Let that one slide. There's a joke in there somewhere. I just can't think of it that quickly.
Yeah. But there are some artists that did that.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the next question I'd love to ask you. Most people who haven't kept up with you in the last number of recent years may not be aware of where you are today with your point of view in art, but where did you make the transition from where people knew you with your traditional landscapes, et cetera, to the type of art you're doing today?
Well, it's a great question. I built my career, became a household name really on my watercolors of landscapes. But I was asked to come alongside Klausner, which was a furniture manufacturer out of Asheboro, and help them create an artist-inspired home collection. I sort of became the poster child for this new invention. And during that, we would celebrate North Carolina from the mountains to the coast, using that inspiration to sort of promote these various collections, whether it's Blue Ridge or Sea Breeze. But we did a collection that was called Simply Urban. And what that demanded was a whole different twist, a different look, because art was the storyboard. And it forced me to change mediums. And I picked up acrylics. Now, you think acrylics, water-based, watercolors, water-based, they'd be cousins. The ugly cousins at best. They don't get along at all. And what I thought I could do is I could paint acrylics like I did watercolors, and you couldn't. So Joy, my gallery director, was going out of the country. God bless her. It was probably the same thing that saved us. And really for about 3 months, I taught myself a whole new genre of painting.
Wow.
And to this day, it's been about 5 years now, I rarely pick up watercolors, and 100% of it is acrylics. So like behind you is a new piece I just finished. And what acrylics allows me to do is to build up some marvelous textures and to work at a scale that is limited with watercolors. Because the paper is only so big and you put it under glass or mats to protect it. With acrylics, you don't have to. So it's really been fantastic to add lots of different binders to get some marvelous effects of runs, and I'm really just learning all over again. I'm being an amateur once more, but I'm having great success.
Yeah.
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 Even this year's honor card is an acrylic painting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this the first year that it's in acrylic?
No, last year was the first year, and so it's a different style. You know, to do representational work in acrylics, it's layering. It's not a forgiving medium like watercolors. You can put it down and you can lift it up. You can spray it, you can blot it. With acrylics, once it dries, it's a plastic, so it's hard. The only thing you can do is to paint over it.
Okay.
And build it up. So you would think, man, that's a pain, but sometimes it's good. You know, if it doesn't work out, you just gesso the canvas and you got some started texture underneath it and go at it again.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
How many hours a day are you actually in the studio painting itself?
Well, so I get here, I'd say, 5 days a week. If I'm working towards a show, I'll paint 6. And I typically paint from 8 until 1. So I'm sitting, standing 5-6 hours a day.
So I've always been curious if an artist if you paint from a vision in your head, are you painting from a representation of a picture that you took, or maybe a vacation shot? How is that creatively?
That's a good question. So, with representational work, you're certainly leaning on inspiration that you've come across, but there is a lot of artistic license in everything that I do. Changing the juxtaposition, moving the tree, adding snow, it could be green grass, time of day, shift of light, versus something like that is really much more elementary in its approach. And you're intentional in using big brushes, where this is much finer detail, representational. And there are not many artists that can play in both audiences. So I've learned to balance that. I've got a strong collector base that really enjoys this direction. And over on the other side, we'll walk through and I'll show you some different paintings. But this corporately for me is really opening up a lot of windows. And we're doing a lot of things with hotels and the hospitality divisions. We have a huge international publisher that takes this work and they reproduce it and they provide it for guest rooms. So we might sell 600 copies of this. And that's the ability that separates me from really kind of an amateur artist, is learning how to license and leverage your work. Think of like a musician. A musician can only perform live so many times. So what do they do to get their music out? They record it.
Right.
Yeah. So same thing with art.
Who were your inspirations as a young artist growing up?
I would say probably Winslow Homer, who has a great retrospective show up in New York right now. John Singer Sargent, not so much his portraiture, but the way that he would take watercolors into the field. Right. Both of those artists used watercolors in the field. And that's what allowed me to do the same thing, because it's easy to just take a little bucket, I got it somewhere around here, all my materials, and you can just sit down and just have at it. Yeah. Now acrylics, doing this, you cannot take this out in the field.
Yeah. How much of your art that you create, do you actually go out and find the inspiration in a location?
Very little now. Yeah. So I'm really prolific. I'd say annually I'm producing 80 to 100 originals a year. And that's about what we sell. Yeah. And that mix is fascinating. It's 50-50. And 50% is what I call contemporary work. And then 50% is more transitional landscapes.
That's amazing.
Bill, thanks a lot for joining us. I look forward to next week where we can go through your studio and see all of your wonderful artwork.